A long, long time ago, planet Earth, our beloved Gaia, was hijacked by dark forces. Living in a lower vibration of fear and duality, destruction was created upon her and her human children were made slaves. Gaia made a call for help, for she wished to ascend and she wanted humanity to rise with her and be free. Starseeds from all over the cosmos who had a deep love for Gaia and humanity heard the call and came from different dimensions and planets to incarnate on Earth and help her ascend. This was a very brave and selfless act to do, for they had to experience the darkness and transmute it from within and shine their light in the darkest of places. Thousands were placed all over the Earth, raising the vibration of the planet and forming a powerful grid of light. And thus, the Gaia warrior was born, an ineffable force of love and light. This is their story.
We're live with Gaia Warriors, and it's Athena, and I'm here with my good friend Tony, who is doing amazing work in what I'd call the sovereignty movement, which is basically a lot of people here in the United States are taking their power back. It's a people-powered movement. There are people here in the United States that are standing up for their rights, that are learning the difference between common law and the corporation law that has happened, that has basically crippled the United States. It's crippled the economy. A lot of people are suffering with slavery, with not having rights, with having their homes and their children taken. They're not having rights in their jobs. And a lot of people are suffering with not having even enough to put food on the table. The corporation has taken over the whole entire world, and what's happening here in the United States is basically a showdown between the light and the dark forces, and whatever happens here in the United States will affect the rest of the world. We're kind of like a stage for the rest of the world. That's what's happening here right now. And it's very inspiring to see a lot of these sort of patriot men and women that are standing up for their rights, that are taking the power back, that are learning how to use the law, this man-made law that has been imposed upon us, where the government are having rule over us when they're actually meant to be working for us, and they're meant to be standing up for our rights. But it's been inverted, and there's a distortion going on, and a lot of these people that are fed up with the system and the injustices are now finding ways to use the pen as a sword, and it's very inspiring. And my friend Tony here is one of these people. Tony, thanks for being here with us.
Oh, thank you. What a wonderful introduction. I felt like I should have said that myself, but that was awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's great to be here. A lot of things you said is absolutely true, and some of the things to point out real quickly is the corporations, and we start to look at words, corpse orating. So we're looking at the corpse orating, and quite literally, that's what took over America and the world, and they got us to believe these lies. Everything that I know these days, I have to look and reevaluate and ask questions. This is where critical thinking comes in, and I have to question everything: who, what, when, where, why, and I add a how. To start looking at things. But the corporation did this. Everything is a lie, and we start to look. Okay, well, what's the truth here? The spiritual war, like you mentioned. Light and dark, and we start looking at the light, and that's the life, right? Mm-hmm. We are a soul. This is something that's very important. We've been, tricked. But when we start looking at that, we say, well, are we, what are we? Well, we're of nature. And this is really important because this leads into the founding fathers, and they're a very key component of our founding documents here, law in America. This is the Declaration of Independence, and it's the unanimous Declaration of Independence because it states in there what the law is, the laws of nature and nature's God. And we're all created equal because we all are of it, and we all have those rights. So this is very important. It also states in there that the sole purpose of government is to secure our rights. Okay? So there's a purpose and a function for government, absolutely. And then the Declaration goes into the definition of tyranny, what the king was doing to us at that time. So when we start looking at that tyranny, we start to see what they were doing. And one of the big ones is the courts. Okay, so they kind of would the king's court. So no matter what problem we had, we'd go to their courts, and then they would rule, and then they would have, dominion over us. This is very important. So it's a very important document, and you can learn more about that at wethepeople2.us. There's a series called the Founding Documents, and Fundamental Law and the Common Law series. The first 5 videos are very important. Also goes over the Constitution. So what is so important about this? The Constitution. What is it? It's actually a trust. You have a grantor, you have the trustees, and then you have the beneficiaries. We, the people, are the grantors, and we're the beneficiaries. And then we gave trustees the specific duties to do, defined in that, what we call, you can call it a trust indenture, but that's what their duties are. And it also outlines what happens if they break those duties, okay? So we are of good souls, good spirits, so we would notice them. We would give them a notice saying, okay, you're off the beaten path. You're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. So we're going to give them the opportunity to correct themselves. And this is very important because first you go to the man or woman, and you would say, there's an error. I'm going to give you the opportunity. Let's make amends. How do we make this right? But if they continue to do it, this is really important. Now you're showing criminal intention. This is very important. This is left out in the laws that we have today. Like you said, the corporations, they really don't get into criminal intention. And you say, well, you committed a crime, but what was my intention? I mean, so this is left out. So I'll get into that in a moment. But it's really important because now through these notices, you've established that. And this is the power of an affidavit that comes after this notice, is the affidavit is truth. So I'm putting my life force up as collateral, saying that I didn't tell a lie, that this is the truth. Because if you're telling a lie in an affidavit like that, you're held liable for it, your life. Now you're committing a crime, okay? So what's important about this is now the other person, the other woman on the other side would have to rebut that point by point in truth, right? Right now we're not getting that. We have a corporation, dead entity, lying and stating that we're something we're not, that they own our soul. That's not right, right? So this is where the laws of nature and nature's God come in, and how do we bring that forth? With the power of the pen. So how do we stand up? Before we ever pick up and do violence, go to the man, with these documents. And this is very powerful because this is coming forth in, across the world right now of the planet. Australia is moving this forth. There's other people too. People still need to, other countries and other nations. And right now, just to give some hope, there is this war going on. It's a spiritual battle. And the white hats, the black hats, you can call it that, to move forward. That has been going on for a while. And I started this journey, deep dive, probably about 4 or 5 years ago. Before that, I was going, I asked questions like, silly questions like, what is money and where it come from? And boy, that opened a whole world right there. So I do want to expand on that a little bit. Do you want to ask any questions up to now? Or?
Sure. I just wanted to talk about the fact that I think there's about 10 million people right now that I've heard that have started this process of taking their status back, because it's like a repudiation, right? Where they're taking themselves out of the system and then claiming themselves to not be under the jurisdiction of the corporation. So going basically from the public sector into the private. So people that aren't familiar with these terminologies, I think it would be really great to sort of talk about the difference between what the public and the private sector is.
Mm-hmm. Well, when we really look at what we call the de jure constitution, meaning, de facto would be by force of arms. If you don't pay your tax, we're going to take your house. right? You know, it's force, right? They send these fake sheriffs and fake police in, and they take our stuff. Because they're not, they're corporate entities. The sheriffs right now and the police, they're actually corporations, and they work, you know, for another corporation. It's just our court system, right? So they're using that, bringing it forth. That's force de facto. Now, the de jure is actually, we hold the power. We didn't empower them to move forward with. So when you start speaking about repudiation, well, what the corporation did was they said, well, you are now a corporate entity. You're all capital name, okay? This is where they go into a birth certificate, and this gets quite involved. However, they're claiming that you are an entity because only when we get into contracts, and this is something that we should be taught right away, there are 8 elements, 7 or 8 elements to a contract, full disclosure being one. But one of the things is that you have to be of like kind. A corporation can deal with a corporation, okay? But a corporation can't deal with a living entity, a living soul, us, okay? So they pull us into these courts under the all caps name, and they're saying you are now this corporate entity. And that is where the repudiation comes in, saying I don't agree. I'm breaking all these contracts that were done under fraud, because they didn't disclose everything to us. And we're saying, hey, I am sovereign, meaning that not a sovereign citizen, that's an oxymoron, but the sovereign, meaning that I am of the earth. You know, God, or the divine, the creator God, and that is the Father. I am part of that. I'm part of, you know, the trees and the whole planet, and I'm bringing that forth. Those are where my rights are coming from. Not from a corporation. They don't get the right to tell me what to do or to take my rights away. And this ties into the founding documents and says we have our rights. Mm-hmm. And we name who our king is, and that's the creator God, laws of nature, and nature's God. So this is where we walk forward with that authority. And this is why some of the things that we, the people, the number 2.us, we say, by what authority? By what authority does this corporation have over me? No. Now, this is interesting. Do we need to do a repudiation? There's a couple things, the way we need to do this. I'm going to say, yeah, it's up to the man or woman to make their own decision. Well, where I stand, I have done it, okay? But as I learn more and more, why do I need to do that? I was born and given all these rights. All I need to do is look at the corporation and call them out on it. Now, what we need to learn is the laws of nature and nature's God really leads us in what's called maxims of law, called the fundamental law. And when we get into the fundamental law, we're looking at there's biblical law, that's part of it, and the maxims as well, which is very powerful. It's like 2 + 2 = 4. You don't dispute it. That's what a maxim is. It's there. You can't dispute it. It's already given. So if you are claiming to be a thing and you act as that thing, you are that thing. If you walk like a duck, you quack like a duck, you're a duck, okay? So this is a maxim. So when we bring this forth, even though they're a corporation, they are claiming to be government and they are acting as government, therefore they are, and we hold them accountable to that oath, to this office in the trustee. So now if they are doing things against us, they are a corporation, they're this dead entity. A dead entity cannot move unless a living entity is moving it forward. Now that living man or woman is held liable to that oath, and if they are breaching that trust law, it states in the Constitution, 2 or more witnesses to the same overt act of treason. This is the penalty. Okay, so we've got to be very clear here. High crimes and treason. Okay, those are severe penalties. These are crimes. This goes back to these notices that we talked about. When I do the notice 1 and then I go into an affidavit, they would have to rebut and say, no, we're not government, I'm a corporation. Well, if they came back and rebutted and said that, no, I'm not government, I'm a corporation, Well, then you have no authority to come forward anyway. Now you're overthrowing a Republican form of government. That's treason. So either way, they're bound. Now, if they claim, oh, well, we're not that at all. We're, coming in under Roman civil law. Okay, well, great. Well, now you're violating what? Laws of war? International law of war? That would be called an inland pirate. The penalty for that is the same as treason.
So what would, if anyone listening to this, because I want a wider audience to understand what we're talking about, what would the benefits for somebody doing this, reclaiming their status, what would the benefits be of that? I know certain things like a parking ticket, if it's not just that you can sort of reclaim, you can send that back. Like, what are the actual benefits of someone doing this work? I know it's about claiming your sovereignty and having, reclaiming that only God has dominion over you, and that's a spiritual thing. But I think as in terms of physical benefits.
Well, if I take that approach, I'd be looking at, let's say, a parking ticket. It's actually, we got to look at these papers that are being presented to us. It's a presentment. They're presenting an offer to contract with you. Okay? Now you can void it, because you don't want that contract, right? Okay, so now you would come in and you would say, hey, I'm a living man or a woman. I walk with that authority. I reject this offer to contract for fraud. They didn't disclose. All of these things. So whether I've repudiated and I'm claiming, I've told the corporation I'm standing as a man or a woman, and I'm not this all caps name, it's still the same approach. You come to this traffic ticket, or whatever it is they're coming at you, whether it's code enforcement or whether it's a tax agency, it's all the same that we would go back with. So we're still doing the notices, and we're still going to the maxims of law. And what's very important about this is, even if I did repudiate and I say I'm standing, I would still use the same fundamental law, the maxims and the Constitution, to bring that forth. This is very important because in America, the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. And there are two of them: federal, which only has 18 enumerated powers, and then you have your state, and whatever that is. And normally in your state constitutions, the very first article says that we hold the power, and that's where we declare our rights. Okay? So that's normally in the first part of every state constitution.
Right. And so what I'm seeing a benefit of this is if a government or tax or any sort of agency trespasses on you, trespasses on your land, trespasses on your person in your car, you can then have the power to say that they don't have authority over you. So it's basically a movement of people gaining their authority, gaining their power, and not being bullied into having to pay certain things that they don't feel is right, or having to have people come on their property and actually dictate what they can do on their own property, right?
And this is very important too. Let's look at it as a violation of our rights rather than a trespass on my rights. I hold all the rights. They're unalienable. You can't mess with my rights, and I can't give them away. Okay? They're inherent. They were given to me by God, the Creator, God, laws of nature. Nature's God. You can't mess with them. So now what happens is when I stand in that authority, this is where I brought my t-shirt, but at We the People, the number2.us, the big takeaway there is this: by what authority? So when I'm doing these notices and affidavits, it is by what authority. I'm going to list the law, which is the supreme law, the constitutions, the state law, constitutions, the federal constitutions. You can't violate those. They all have to be in line with that. And you can't violate the laws of nature and nature's God. Those are the maxims of law, and even biblical scripture is law as well. And I've had to dive into that as well. But, there are penalties for that, like Proverbs, I think it's section 31, if I recall correctly. But if ye found a thief, then sevenfold is due back, and he can seize all of their assets. So this is why they don't want us to look at the Bible, you see. They tainted me on the Bible. I'm now reading it with new eyes, going, whoa, this is pretty powerful. Because the book of Genesis, I know we don't want to get too far off track here, but it actually is a trust. It calls out a trust. God created us, and then he granted us dominion over the land, air, and water, all fishes in the sea, things that walk the earth and fly in the air. So what he did was say, be fruitful and multiply. That means take care of the earth, be fruitful with it, and then multiply, have the offspring. So now you've got the grantor, the trustee, and we are the beneficiaries as well. So now you've got this trust, and we get into trust law. It's very, very important. This is something that they've hidden from us. So our power is in really comprehending what the law is. It all comes back to the spiritual law, like Gaia warriors, right? So now we're going to use the power of the pen to bring it forth. I don't need to bring forth physical violence. Okay, this is what's been laid down and given to us. And like you were saying before, why is America great? By what authority? This is why America is great. This is why it's the great experiment, because we're a republic, a constitutional republic. You hold the power, I hold the power. And if we had 10,000 people doing what I'm stating here, the notices, it's very powerful. We've already stopped some things in Massachusetts. They wanted to violate, trespass, the Second Amendment, right? And they were able to shut things down. And this is, you're seeing this systematically across the country. So it's very powerful when you bring back the fundamental law, the common law. That's common between you and I. We were given these rights. How do you stand on them? Very important.
I like that you said that, because I was about to say that it's not just about the paperwork, it's an identity shift. Like, you have to actually live it. You have to have that confidence and that conviction of owning who you are, having the authority of who you are, and the authority of God being the only dominion over you, and that we are the people, and that it's our God-given birthright. And I think that that's very important when you are confronted with, say, an authority figure like the police or these tax people. It's very important that you speak to these people with that conviction, with that confidence of owning who you are, because it's an energetic and spiritual movement too. It's not just paperwork. It's something that you have to fully embody.
Yes.
And I think that this is a very empowering thing, because I look at a lot of people, especially with paying taxes. The tax dollars are now going to fund wars, and we have no say over where our tax dollars are going. And a lot of people are open to paying taxes to improving the roads, or to taking care of the garbage or whatever. But it's going to fund wars, and we're not having any say in that matter. And also with people are spending their lives trying to purchase a property, and the property is not even really theirs, right? They have to, until they put, which I've heard is either a land patent, or you put your property in a trust, you don't actually own your property. And I think a lot of people don't know this, and they're working their whole lives to pay off a property that they're not actually ever really owning.
This is the great deception. And the root of the deception is the money system, okay? So this is what is money, where does it come from? That was my journey, and I started fighting the banks. I'm like, wait a minute, I've got to stand in truth. And then I tried to do it in the courts, and I found out I lost in the courts. I'm going, how did I lose? I brought, what's going on here? So, and then I find out that the courts, the bar, actually protect the banks, okay? So the banks, the money system, let's just talk about that for a moment, okay? So the Federal Reserve Act, the Federal Reserve Bank, it's a private bank. It is not anything to do with America, okay? So when they created this back in 1912, there's an island called Jekyll Island. Now the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds were all there, and they constructed a meeting place, a conference room and a house, and they had that there. Now, in the conference room, underneath the table that they created this fake act on, fiat money, Federal Reserve, they made it sound like it was federal. Underneath that table is a glass floor, and underneath there you can actually see a sacrificial altar. Now, on that island, there were Indians that lived there, indigenous. They grew to 9 to 15 feet tall, and on that altar, that is where they would do their sacrifices to Lucifer or, demonic entities, okay? So when they created this act, they created this money system while worshiping Lucifer, Baal, Moloch, whatever these demonic entities are, okay? So now that's what it was. In the 1913, it actually got enacted, and they started creating the central bank. So that's the root of all evil. Now here's the interesting part. Well, you can look at the dollar, and you can look in the back. You can find a little owl on there. This is, going back to Moloch, okay? So it's on the dollar itself. In God we trust, all capital God, which is not the creator God, okay? It's their God. Mm-hmm. So when we start looking at this, every time we use this money system, we are adding energy into that realm. So we're giving part of our soul, we're agreeing to contract with this evil system, okay? But it's all done out of fraud and deception. So it voids it, we just need to call it out, right? So the root of all evil comes to that. And when we get into like the mortgage, when we get to look at words, mortgage, it's a French word, and it means the death grip. Why would you want to get into a death grip, right? For 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, for the rest of your life. They're squeezing you. Think about that. They're not just squeezing, they're taking your life force. The one thing that we have is our life force and time. Well, two, right? So we really only have a limited amount of time in this realm, okay? We got spiritual, we're in other realms. However, what they're doing is actually sucking our life force, our spiritual force out of us. And when we know that we are the spirit and we are the creditors because we're bringing that life force forward, we're the creditors. They created a debt system, a debt-based system. They made us the debtors, okay? That's incorrect. That's a corporation, a dead entity they're sucking our life force from the living. You see, so when we get into the spiritual aspects, when we stand in our authority, by what authority? Because my authority comes from higher into here, into my heart space. Okay, so I'm saying I'm walking forward with that. We have to have the faith that that is true, so we can stand and take ownership of that, and we bring that forward. This is very powerful because this is exactly what's going on right now. Now, what is going on? Well, this war's been going on for quite some time. The White Hats have been at this systematically dismantling the corporation, U.S. Incorporated, for some time. U.S. Incorporation, they dissolved that September 30th at midnight, October 1 is done. The banking systems have finalized. They run on a fiscal year which starts October 1st, okay? That's done September the 30th at midnight, okay? Now, that's done. So what we're going to go through here is called the revaluation. This is what I see. I can back it up through documents and things I've read, okay? But the revaluation is going back to God's money, natural law, the laws of nature, going back to asset back with gold, silver in America, specifically because the Constitution says gold and silver, which also falls in line with Scripture that's of God's creation.
Before you go on, Tony, I just want to do a little bit of background before, because I think what you're saying is really important. But to anyone listening to this, and this is all brand new to you, I think it's really important to talk about how the Federal Reserve are basically a private corporation that are creating money, that are loaning the money and giving the money to countries. So I don't think people actually realize that a private corporation that's not anything to do with the government are actually the ones that are creating the money, and they're the ones that are giving the money to the countries, but they're giving it to them at interest. So every time a country is being given money from this private entity, they are in debt. So the whole world is in debt. And so you're basically giving money to a country, and the country on interest, that country, it's money that will never be able to be paid back because it doesn't exist. Right. So they've created the system that the whole world is in debt, every single person inside it is in debt, and it's to a private to these private rich families that are basically ruling the world, these banking families that have been here for the longest time, and they've infiltrated the education system, the medical system, pretty much every aspect. If you look, and you're talking about the Lucifer thing, which I'm happy you brought,
Lucifer
because
Trust, actually,
it's the Lucifer Trust, because it's what's really happening. And we all know about, there's Lucifer, and then there's God, and there's the dark, and there's the light, but it is real, and you can look at it. If you look at the music industry, and a lot of these singers are basically singing about these rituals to these demonic entities, and there is a lot of evidence out there, and I will put some of it in this video, where you can see these people are worshiping these dark entities. And the reason why this is all going ahead is because we are actually giving consent. So when we are watching these very dark horror movies, when we are listening to this music, a lot of the time these dark forces are basically telling us their agenda through movies, through film, through adverts, through all sorts of media and all sorts of music. And because we are not contesting, and we are actually complying and listening to it and taking it as a form of entertainment, we are consenting. And so all these contracts that we have been given, we're consenting to it. So everything that is happening to us is because we are blindly consenting to all of it when we don't know any better. And that's what they're playing on. They're playing on our ignorance. And that's what the whole point of this conversation is to light this awareness into people, so that people know that we actually have the power. We actually have the numbers too, because it's only the 1% that are controlling us. And if we could come together as the 99% and take our power back and take our real authority back, then we could literally shape the world into the world that we want it to be, instead of the world that has been imposed upon us. So I just wanted to put that background. And this has been going on for a long time. And what Tony said, there is a faction of the black hats, which is the 1% banking ruling elites. And then there's the white hats, which are really brave people that are working within the system, within the CIA, within the government, within the military. These are very brave people that have gone into these dark systems, pretending to be a part of them, and they're actually shining the light and taking control inside the military and the corporations and all these places that have these control. And so they're double agents, and they're very, very brave people. And we can see that is happening. As Tony told me, that 200 positions in the military have now been dismissed. And these are people that have been very corrupt, that are causing a lot of damage to the world, and creating these laws that are imposing upon us, that are very cruel, very dark. These are satanic worshipping beings that have now being taken down. And so this is happening all over. And so when Tony's now going back into the white hat story, I just want you to know what that actual means. And if you could tell us a little bit more about the kind of work that is happening, so we can instill hope. People can know that behind the scenes, that the white hats, the good guys, are actually taking the power back. We are winning. The light is winning. And the reason why it looks so dark out there is because the dark forces are actually scared that we are waking up to the truth. We are taking our power back. There's a huge movement going on, and they're scared about that. So they're going to try and instill more fear. And that's why the wars are going all crazy. That's why there's all this fear propaganda is getting heightened in the news, because they are scared of us realizing this power. But the fact of the matter is, they can't change what's happening. It's a domino effect.
It is, yeah. It's a time for that change. Very well said. And in the founding documents, you know that what's the very first thing we put in the Bill of Rights? Freedom of speech. Okay, and this they've taken away a long time ago. And this is why they use their number one weapon is the media, the television, the films and music industry, and thou shalt not put another God before us, and that's what we've done. So we go to a Taylor Swift concert, and I did see one of those. She was actually performing a witchcraft right there on the stage, and calling it out, naming what it is, and people, yay, entertainment. No, you just sold your soul, my friend. You just added to that. They use our life force energy to go behind that spell casting that she's bringing forth, and whatever she's doing, it's adding to that energy, and our souls are being bought into it. There are other entities, demons are for real. I've seen them. I've had my encounters with them. So very powerful what you said there, but that is that freedom of speech. Their number one tool is the media, the news stations. All the news outlets are all owned by 6 companies, and if you follow it all the way back, they'll go back to BlackRock, Vanguard, all the way back to the Vatican. That's like really the Vatican. Everything goes back to the Vatican. But that corporation, okay? So when we're going through this now, it's a psychological war, spiritual war. Through the media, the entertainment business, the whole industry, the news you're watching the news stations are listed as entertainment, by the way. That's an entertainment corporation. So it's not real, but they're using, when you learn these techniques, you'll see what they're doing. They're invoking the emotion. There's no data. What they're doing is getting us to respond at a frequency of fear. They're instilling that up. Then we just become fear-based, and we're not really listening to the divine. Okay? Now they have control over us. Very important to keep us in fear, and this is what they always do. The sky is falling. Great. That's a fear push. Whatever it's going to be, right? There's always another fear thing that they instill upon us. Now, what's important about this is the white hats, as they move forward, they have to move forward like knowing that they have to get the general population to see what's going on and accept it and be able to be open to something new, because we've got to go through basically a deprogramming and divorcing ourselves from this lying media, this controlling media that's out there, the propaganda, all of that. So this is very important, because this is unlike any other war that we've ever seen. This is not, tanks on a battlefield. This is really what's going on behind the scenes, and how do we do that in a way that we don't instill more fear, so that if I do instill fear, then I could have a civil war, right? I could have, a civil war, let's be clear, our definition, that's man against man, okay? Revolution is man against government, okay? And we don't want either of those. We lose. If we fall into that trap, they win, period. Because now they can have an excuse to come in and roll in with bad, armed forces and so on and so forth. So this is very important when you said that you want to get into the spiritual aspect. So I hope that helps clarify some of it.
Yeah, I think it would be good to move into the direction of, you were talking about a specific law that has been passed that is now going to be taking control over anyone that is against the well-being of the United States. So if we could go into a little bit about even the military thing, like you said about these 200 positions, any moves that you have now seen that are proving that tides are changing. I, for instance, think this whole Diddy thing that's going on, Epstein, a lot of these pedophilic men that are very satanic, that are doing horrendous things. It's coming to the surface. I mean, the human trafficking, the child abuse, that's all coming to the surface. It's all these things that were in the shadows, that were in the darkness, that have been operating for the longest time, that no one knew about, is now coming to the surface, because that is how we get the light shines onto the darkness and puts light onto what's been hidden. And so all of the stuff is coming out to the surface to be seen, so that we can then purge it out, that we can clear it out, and then and go back to harmony once more. So if we could talk about a few of these things.
Absolutely. That's very important, because this is the dark to the light.
Mm-hmm.
The darkness can't exist in the light, hence darkness, right? So bringing this into the light is very important, and we're seeing some great things. Like you say, Diddy is the latest one, right, that came forth. It has so many ties right now through the entertainment industry, the politicians, CEOs, corporations, etc. And the question is, it's not just Diddy, because he's just the face. Who's above him? It's the people we don't see. Mm-hmm. And the white hats know who they are. I'm able to research one or two, but it all comes down to the financial system. When they grab the hold of the financial system, you can trace every dollar. So this child trafficking, human trafficking that goes on, we're able to track it all down, seize all assets. This is very important because you can look at Executive Order 13848, 13818 as well. Now, this goes into human trafficking, serious offense. So if that's found, now let's say I did find P. Diddy, now I would go in and look at all the transactions around him and all the people involved. That's going to take down a whole lot of people. Same thing with Epstein and a lot of other things, you know. So this is coming out more and more, and it's a psychological war. We've been led into a little. It was Anthony Weiner's laptop. There was some, you know, videos with Hillary Clinton. Then there was the next one was Epstein that came out, and then, you know, the Pizzagate, the Epstein, and then we, you know, see P. Diddy here as we're getting close to the end, another phase of this war that's going on. Okay, so that when that comes out, we start to go, whoa, is this really going on? We're going to want to reject it, but it's coming out. It has to come out because it has the dark to the light. So this is very important that we see that. There was something else you mentioned, the entertainment business.
And then the
the acts. As far as what the white hats are doing, you know, moving forward, just recently, very good news, is there was a declaration that they would enact the Foreign Enemies Act of 1798. This is very significant because 1798 is when we look at the de jure government. You see, there was the Act of 1871, for anybody who doesn't know. That's pretty much the date that everything became a corporation. They created United States Incorporated. They tricked us. They just renamed our de jure, and they made it a corporation and took over everything, okay? So this is going back before then. So that's the real constitutional republic act that he is bringing, the white hats are bringing forth. This is very important, and we start looking at that. That gives us authority. It was created because there was a war at the time, and there was pending war with France and some other things going on. They needed to be able to remove these foreign aliens that were that were against the republic, against the people. And when we read through that act, it will allow the white hats to be able to remove everything that's been coming across the southern border. And mind you, there's stuff coming across the northern border. Look here and not there. So, you know, we have been infiltrated. You know, there's numbers like that I've heard that are 50,000 CCP, you know, here. That would be the Chinese Communist Party. So they are here. We know that. We've seen a lot of this being exposed to us. They infiltrated our universities, right? So these are now anybody that is against the republic. This is insurrection, sedition, treason. Now we can remove them under that act. We can also remove all of these illegal aliens that came across the border. This border is very important. So
when you talk about the illegal aliens, I just want to broaden on that subject, because a lot of people I know are very liberal, and they're like, well, we should just have open borders and everybody should just be let in and it should be a free world and everything. And I used to actually feel that way, and I have actually changed my thought process on that, because I've found out that what actually has been happening is they've been taking these gang members and these people so the United States has obviously back in the day have attacked some of these poorer countries and have enforced, and not even just the United States, the white colonialists have gone to these poorer countries and have enforced certain rules, and there's been a lot of genocide in a lot of these Central and South American countries.
Well, let's be clear about what that is, because when we talked a little while ago about the finances and the Federal Reserve, this really is the central banks that are moving forward, and they move forward through the bar, and they actually got a hold of some of the military complex as well. Because really, any war that we're looking at always comes back to the finance, the banks. It's not nation against nation.
Yeah.
It's always
the
banking
banks against the people.
So, okay.
Yeah, but what I was trying to get to the point is, if you're someone that's grown up in a poor country that's been war-ridden, and your family has been destroyed and your community has been destroyed because of these colonialists, these banking colonialists, and a lot of these people that are working for these banking people in the military have been brainwashed. They're not knowing exactly who they're fighting for or what's actually going on, but they into training, they get brainwashed into fighting a war that they're not actually really knowing what behind the scenes is going on. And so now there are these people in Central and South America, or all over the world really, that are now hating America, or hating and putting all of the blame on the United States, or on the UK or wherever. But they're born with this hatred towards the white man, because that's who's come into their village or into their country and ravaged it. And so now these kinds of people, because of the trauma that's happened, they've turned into violence. They've maybe joined a gang, because, you know, when you're poor and you're angry and you're traumatized, you can be easily seduced into turning into violence. And so now these people that were in the jails in a lot of these Central and South American countries are now being led into the United States, because they want to create disharmony and civil war in the United States, because they know that there's a stronghold. This is one of the only countries where the people of the United States are actually armed, and they have, what was that, the Second Amendment of this Constitution means that the people in the United States are actually armed. They can actually defend themselves. This is the only country in the world that has that, where the actual people, the general population, the people power actually have a way to defend themselves. And the United States government banking system control people know this, and so they have brought in and infiltrated a bunch of people into this country that could potentially harm the general population. And so that's what Tony's talking about.
Yeah, and that's exactly correct. Now, when we look at the Communist Manifesto, this is a tactic that's been tried and true for them throughout the centuries, okay? When you take over a country, you want to open the border and bring in foreign, basically it's a foreign army that you're bringing in, okay? And you want to cause dissent. You want to cause, there will be actions to taking to upset the people that are there is one reason. So now you can cause a fight, claim, well, I'm a Democrat, I'm a Republican, and really they're not. They're paid infiltrators. Okay, so and they fool us with this, because we'll think, oh, well, it was the Republican, it was the Democrats. No, it was this other infiltration that came across the border. So they're being paid to do this stuff, and these gangs, they answer to people, okay, because they get money from somebody. So this gets quite, goes back to the banking families again. So now we want to take over. We bring in all of these different entities across the borders, and we bring them in. It does a number of things. There's not just one purpose. See, America, we are based on a moral society. You're not going to come over and steal something from me. It's morally wrong, amoral, right? We know there are cherished institutions, between us, for us in America, right? And that's freedom, right? But we're not going to trespass on somebody else. We're not going to violate somebody else unless we're violated upon. So what do? They come in and they start to break down our society. And this is, goes into different types of movements. I know it's a hot topic, but going into these, transgenderism, that kind of thing, you see it a lot. It's a propaganda on the TV. I mean, the percentage of those, of what that is very small, but they're doing this to create a disharmony so that we have an amoral society. When they break these morals down, then they're able to make us go wherever
it's like the Black Lives Matter thing that happened, where they basically paid the police to brutalize a black man so that they would then get all the black people to be angry, and then it causes more separation, more us versus them, black and white, we all hate each other. It's the same divide and conquer thing that they've done the whole time to get us fighting amongst each other, to bring in people that's foreign people from across the borders, from all over the world. This is what happened, when they bombed Syria, and then all the Syrian refugees went into Europe, and a lot of them hate European and white people and blame them for what they did to their country. And my heart bleeds for those people, those Syrian refugees, and those people, the refugees that have had to flee from their country because their country has been attacked. But then they're completely brainwashed into thinking that it's the fault of the white person, and so there's this racial war that's being imposed by the banking systems, because they want us fighting amongst each other. They want us blaming each other, so that we don't actually unite and realize that there's only one tyranny, and that's the banking against the people.
Yeah, again, by what authority? It always comes down to asking the question, by what authority? Now, there's a little analogy that I use to show that. You know, if you ever see one of those little red mercury lights, you know, and you can put a little, and the cat will follow it around, right? Wherever you put that light on the wall, it'll climb the wall, all that stuff. You know, and you try to do that with the dog. The dog might do it for a little while, then he goes, he starts looking up and he looks at me. Who's doing this, right? This is what we need to do. You know, if there's anything that's being propaganda, they're told to me, that makes you my enemy, and I'm to blame you, another man or a woman, because we're all created equal, then I got to go, well, who benefits? You got to look up. Because I don't have anything against you. I've traveled all over America, some in Mexico and Canada, you know, and I talk to people pretty much all over the place. We all want to be able to raise our families. We want to live a happy, healthy life. We want to be able to get back to our children, our grandchildren, or other people around us. That is a majority of the people, and this is the laws of nature, and nature's God. We just really want to be at peace, right? Just left alone, be able to live our lives, be happy, give back to the community, help each other out the way we want to help each other out. And when that's upset, we got to look and say, well, wait a minute. Who's telling us that you're my enemy, right? So that I don't get in a conflict with you. Why? No, you're my neighbor, right? Love thy neighbor. I go, okay. So who's instigating this divide? We got to look up. We got to start asking deeper questions. And then this is, you know, by what authority? Who, what, when, where, why, how? You know, critical thinking. And then we come right back to what can we do about it. And that was just giving us you know, we got 10 minutes left, so we got to wrap it up. I'll ramble in case you didn't notice. The point I was trying to make is, you know, we start to ask the questions, and the most important question we can ask is by what authority, you know, because you're not my enemy. Okay? If you attack me, well, you're going to leave me no choice, right? But this is where we get into the notices and so on and so forth. Now, you know, so very important. I hope that help add something there.
Yeah, and just to leave some, like, the audience on a hopeful note.
Oh, yeah.
I just really want to, if you could just touch on some of the other things that you can see that are going on. So we see what's going on in the media with these, you know, with the entertainment industry is collapsing, the banking industry is collapsing. You said something about the military.
All of these things are collapsing, you know, because they're being exposed. The pharmaceutical industry, the hospitals, you know, the banking industry, the government, because we know it's not government, right? So all of these industries are collapsing because they're being exposed dark into the light. So this is really important. Now, I'm not sure if I mentioned this earlier before because we had another conversation, but USA Incorporated on October 1st was done. Same thing with the banking industry. So we'll go into the revaluation, and this will be the BRICS nations, if anybody looks that up, Britain, Russia, India, China,
South Africa,
Saudi Arabia, and then there are a number of other nations that have signed on to that. I've forgotten the last number I saw was somewhere over 100, but I believe it'll get up to 200
countries
that signed on to that. Why is that important? Because they're coming in with a gold or an asset-backed currency.
Right, because it's not just, they can't just print money from thin air. Right. It's actually going to be backed by actual asset that actually has value to it.
Yeah, that's right, and that ends the central bank, like what you were mentioning before. The central bank goes in, starts these wars, they lend money, then they wind up taking everybody's property because they can't pay it back. You know, it's fake interest, all this stuff. So the bottom line is that we're seeing the collapse of that. What will we see here? Well, you know, we're seeing prices go up. We'll probably see some hyperinflation. We're already seeing that now because that fiat money is becoming worth less and less and less, which is a good thing, because when that collapses, everything that they have stolen from us shall be returned. Now, what do we see now? When we look at the stars, we're seeing some scriptures come true. When we look at the stars, we enter in the age of Aquarius on the 19th of November. Okay, so this puts us into a whole nother realm, a whole nother season that's coming forth as well. that's being birthed, and we're going through those birthing pains as well. Okay, so this, we just got to keep praying, meditating, staying out of fear. It keeps us out of fear. When I'm praying for the best for you, you know, gratitude, I'm wishing the best for you. And those people in North Carolina just got hit with this, you know, so-called hurricane, right? We pray for them. We're sending them that. It will respond. I mean, we are talking about spiritual, you know, energy here. We bring that forth. We don't know how it will manifest over there. It'll manifest in good, so we continue to pray. In the meantime, I'm receiving that too, okay, as we move forward. Now, these are physical things that we can see in the 3D realm. You can go look up Basel III banking that comes out of Switzerland, right? All the banks have to be asset-backed. So what are these banks? Look at Chase, look at Wells Fargo, JP Morgan. These are all go back to those 13 families. Okay, you can tie that all the way back to the bloodlines. You want to fallen angels. You want to go that far back, but that's collapsing. So this is, as we move forward, we're looking at more and more signs that there is a good movement going. I mean, just look at how much we've been, all the great things that we're seeing now, you know. Yeah, it's going to look horrible. Because, oh my gosh, I can't believe that's happening, you know. People may shut their eyes, you know, to some of this stuff. They don't want to see it because their whole identity has been wrapped up, you know, I am an engineer. Well, what happens if you're not an engineer anymore, right? Well, I don't know what to do with myself, right? I don't have an identity, you know. So this is why it's so important to be one with spirit, the divine, and as we bring that forth. Because now, no matter what occurs, all the fear that's going to be out there, they're going to be pushing it. We got to stay connected with the divine as we go through it, because there will be, look, there are forces on our land here in America, and I've already seen, you know, there were railroad cars that went off the tracks. You know, we've got these hurricanes, we've got other explosions happening across America, so on and so forth. Those are not accidents. Those are what were coming across that border, and they're being paid to do these things. So the hope is we see these acts like the Alien Enemy Act of 1798, the importance that's coming from the de jure, that's the real divine law, laws of nature, and nature's God coming forth. We're seeing you know, people out there saying, hey, we're going to get rid of chemtrails, and people don't know. I don't want to get too far off, but you know, there are these things that are being moved into play now to empower the people. And as far as taxes go, I know, well, I've only got like a minute left, but we are of the Creator. We are with this land. So if a corporation wants to take oil out of the land, who gets the benefit of that? Why does the corporation make all the money on that? It's yours, it's mine, it's everybody's on this land. So that money that's being profited by the corporation, sure, the corporation should make some money, pay their employees, so on and so forth. But the money that comes from that, this is what our trustees are supposed to be doing, is ensure that that comes back to the people, back into our coffers, back to the treasury, the real treasury, okay? And this is where we don't need to pay a lot of tax because we have liquid gold, petroleum, right, underneath our feet coming up. And that can do so many things. You know, if we want to get out of fossil fuels, there's lots of technology out there that can do that.
Right.
But this is why we don't really, these taxes are just, it's just taxing our life force.
And last thing that I just wanted to mention was when we were speaking the other day, you were telling me that for anyone here that lives in the United States that is worried about the infiltration that's happening, you told me that the white hats have taken over quite a lot of you said like there was a large number of defense in place, right, that you said that have been taken over.
Well, yeah, there's been, you know, a lot of movements as far as the military, like you mentioned before, now is up over 200 military officers that have been removed, either fired or retired or something along those lines. I've seen that, I've witnessed that. And so that's very important because the military was infiltrated, you know, by bad guys. So they've had their own internal fight. The military has had their own internal fight, white hat, black hat, and what we would see would say, oh, they're a black hat. Well, it might not be, like you were mentioning before. The art of war is in play. This is an amazing war to witness, but we're watching it unfold. And we have to know that there is something going on here on the good side. And as we move forward into this so-called election, November the 5th, I don't know how it's going to play out. But there's a lot of things that the white hats can do to move forward to provide us a new way of being and showing us this freedom. So, like all these news corporations that were, they've all been against America overthrowing the Republican form of government. They were all involved in a lot of shady stuff like P. Diddy stuff we're talking about, right? So they become seized and they become the people's. So I looked at some documentation where these executive orders led us into the seizures of corporations. Okay, when I checked, there were over 49,000 corporations that were seized. That's what's been going on in the background. That's why you see these CEOs step down. There was like over 300 CEOs that stepped down. Okay, yeah, because their assets have been seized. They probably more than just stepped down because they, have been involved with this child trafficking, human trafficking, and all this other stuff. Some other stuff going on.
So, Tony, we were talking about the white hats and that they've taken over the military and that their 200 positions have been, dismissed. And you were also talking about because from what I'm really passionate about is that there's a lot of people in the United States right now that are in a lot of fear that they think there's going to be a civil war that's going to happen with this infiltration of these foreign entities. And I would like to assure the people that we do have a very good defense. And you were talking something about there being 400,000 police or something and another 400,000 sheriffs. I think a good point to tell people is that majority of people, when they sign up to be a police officer in the military, they're doing it from a good place of wanting to protect their country, wanting to protect their community. There's only a few bad apples that are at the top or have got the leadership positions that are calling some of these shots, and people are scared to lose their jobs and they're following orders, and there's a bit of brainwashing going on, but ultimately these people are good inside and they have good intentions, they have good hearts. So could we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the Fraternal Order of Police, from what I've seen, is 370,000 members of that order, up to 400,000. Let's just round it up so it's easy numbers, 400,000. Okay. Now the sheriffs are also another armed force in America. That's probably equal to 400,000, maybe somewhat less. Okay. But let's make it a round number, 800,000 of this standing army in America. Now, what's important to note here is that they are corporations. And last interview we just had, we were talking about the USA Incorporated is now dissolved. It's been liquidated. It is now being done. We're going to go back to a de jure constitutional republic, okay? So what does that mean? Well, I can only give you my opinion on this, okay? And that would be to say that how would the white hats go in and use the standing army to benefit the people, okay? When we talked a little while ago, we were talking about everything comes down to this, child trafficking, election interference, and so on and so forth. Well, you have financial records for all of that. So that means that if you are a bad sheriff, right, and you were involved in that, they're going to have evidence of that. In fact, the people, by using these notices, can collect that evidence, can go to the grand jury and do a criminal indictment for that sheriff, so we could help remove some of those. But let's say we're the white hats, okay? The corporation's done. I would go to each one of these, let's say the captains or the chief of police in an area, right, and talk to them and say, okay, you're no longer a corporation. You're going to be, sworn in to uphold your oath to the people. Now, a lot of them, are good people. They just, like you said, got in and they wanted to do the right thing, but they were never trained. I've talked to some of these police officers and sheriffs. They don't have courses that teach them about the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution of the state, and where rights come from, what sovereignty is. In fact, they're being taught right now that everybody's a sovereign citizen. These patriots are all enemies of the state, and so on and so forth. And they're just being taught incorrectly. Okay, but let's say we were to give them the opportunity to show them, hey, you can do the right thing, and give them a way to step into the right side, right? And then the other bad apples that don't want to do that, if there's evidence that supports that maybe there needs to be criminal charges brought against them, then, for pedophilia or whatever, trafficking, then they would be, obviously dealt with on that level, okay? So there is this standing army in America, and it shouldn't be, because we're not supposed to have a standing army, right? But perhaps the white hats, and I'm just laying this out there, perhaps there's a way for them to be able to unify and use that standing army as well for the people. And there was something that just came out that says that the military can work with local police and local law enforcement, okay, and back them up. And that can be scary, because people can look at it and go, oh, look, the military is going to come after us and they're going to use the police and so on and so forth. But what if it's a good move? What if the white hats are behind that move, right? And these are being used to help us, right? So now we have that as well. We have the National Guard. The National Guard's been deployed into Europe and other states since, 2020, right? Right, just after the election, they got federalized, which means that we can look at that executive order, but those National Guard now have been federalized and are doing things. So, how does that play in? I can't pretend to know, the whole strategy. I can see it, okay, see what's going on, but they are activated, right? And with this last order declaration to invoke the Alien Enemy Act, Sedition Act of 1798, that's also something else we can use as far as combating any enemy forces that are on our soil, all right? So think about this too. The British Accredited Registry, that's the bar. They run all the courts, they run all the law. They protect the bankers, okay? Are they foreign or are they domestic?
They're supposed to be domestic, but they're foreign.
Foreign, right? So, I don't know. I'm just, smiling, because perhaps that's a way to remove the bar in the state as well, in America, right? Because the bar is very significant worldwide. This is how they're backing up the CPS, the HHS, and all this child trafficking. So, and the courts are doing that. It's the bar. So how do you, combat that as well? All right. So there's a lot of great things and nuances here that we're really gotta really think about it. What happens if all of the stuff coming across the border is not all bad? What happens if, like right now, one of our allies actually is Russia. That's why they badmouth Russia. They make them the enemy. But what happens if Russian troops came across that border, right? And they were actually working with us. We would have the right, as a de jure government, right? We would that military would be able to coordinate with our allies to help remove some of the enemy as well. So, who says everything coming across that border is bad?
I like that. I like that, because even when earlier in this year they said that there was a port strike going on, and everybody was freaking out because that would, affect the supply chain, and there would be food shortages and everything. And then we all thought it was because the workers weren't getting paid. But then I heard another thing was actually, no, what's happening is that the white hats are taking over the ports because there was a lot of trafficked children coming across these ports, and they wanted to control that. And it was also around equity and trusts and taking the control back of the ports.
Yeah.
So that's a really good point. Whenever you see something, don't always take it for what it is, because there could be a lot of reason why that's happening, and there is a lot of hope. It's just not being shown because they don't want you to see that. So we're trying here over here is to like, let's show you what the other side of things are looking at. Let's show you what's happening behind the scenes, that there are actually a lot of brave, amazing people on this planet that are risking their lives to make a change. And this brings me to my next question with you.
I wanted to comment on the ports real quick. Okay,
right, yeah, please do.
The ports, they were actually sold to China. Okay, I saw evidence of that going back in the Obama years. And now think about this. That's the corporation, and as the corporation collapses, now it becomes under the de jure, the real government, and it's up to us, for that real government to reclaim that property. The UN, United Nations, actually came in, and they were in control of a lot of the police, by the way. Now, the white hats have been busy, okay? But I believe they defanged the UN, okay? So if those people at the top are removed, then the police no longer will, respond to what they're being told from the top, because there'll be no orders coming down, okay? So this is very important. This is a very complex, a very dynamic plan that's coming forward. Now, I used to be a research engineer in project engineering and so on and so forth, and I used to put together all kinds of project plans. That's why I kind of can see a lot of this stuff, all right? It's just a natural gift for me to be able to look at project plans, okay? But there's a lot that's going on, to be able to take this back. So the ports were sold unlawfully, and that makes perfect sense to me in my analysis, going, okay, yeah, they would need to reclaim those ports. And the white hats have been, busy, and they've been, strategizing for decades, okay? I don't know how far back, but at least since the Kennedy assassination, okay, if not further, okay? So there's a lot of great stuff. Now, you were going to ask me a question?
Yeah, so the last question that I was just thinking about is actually a friend brought it to my attention. What will happen when they start doing these arrests? And, there are some people, I think, that we were talking about demons, and a lot of people have, I think, been possessed, or they sold their soul, or they have been traumatized, and, something bad happens to them as a kid, and so that they don't actually have a conscience. So some people, I think, can maybe be rehabilitated, and then some people might not be able to be rehabilitated. And what does that sort of justice system look like in this new paradigm where the white hats have taken over, where the light is in control? What do you think that looks like?
Well, ultimately, those criminal actions come back to the people, and these are sealed indictments. Now, when we looked at some of the executive orders, 13818, 13848, these, if they're in violation of those are treason, genocide, these are high crimes, okay? But they will have their due process of law. They will be a trial. Now, whether that's a court-martial, in a military court or not, is remains to be seen. Now, if there's somebody who's doing these very gnarly atrocities and they go before a court-martial, it will be decided that day, tried in the morning, and penalty carried out in the evening. That's just the way court-martials do. Look at the manual for court-martial, okay, and see what jurisdiction. Anyway, get in an area where I have an overview. I don't have the details. There are a couple of guys out there who read that stuff in detail. I haven't, I looked at the overview, so I got like the executive summary. But to answer your question, if it's very much these atrocities, human trafficking, there are severe penalties for that. If it is somebody that was traumatized and, or blackmailed into doing some things, some people are being blackmailed. They're gonna murder your family if you don't do what you're being told. You go, oh, well, I don't really have a choice, right? Well, this too comes to light. So this is where due process of law comes into play. This is why you have a trial by jury, not a jury trial, right? So now you have the chance, you have the opportunity to make amends. So maybe you don't get, the full high crime. You committed crimes, so you got to pay your pittance for that, whatever that's going to be, right? So, and then you got to be okay with that, because now you're saying forgiveness and you're asking for that. Well, fine, we'll make amends. This is what this is what you owe. You don't get to you know, you got to, there's a penalty that goes with it. But is it the cost of your life? Perhaps not, right? So these are things that are occurring. You know, how will it play out exactly? I don't know. I know that when the banking system goes down, the courts, they're all doing this debt slavery bondage system, and they're all barred the British accredited registry, and you know they're foreign agents on they're pirateering, they're doing all kinds of satanic rituals when you step into these courtrooms. There's all kinds of stuff going on, not just one thing. But when the banking system goes, they go too. Now, how is that going to move forward? This is where we need people with knowledge. This is why you go to wethepeople2.us and get an education there, because we're going to need people who know, you know, what our authority is and how do we bring that forward. And the trial by jury, you know, if you're on that jury and I'm on the jury, we're going to have to look at the evidence, not information. We'll be looking at evidence and questioning witnesses ourselves. This is the trial by jury. So now I can question the witness. I can look at the evidence, all evidence, not just some of it, like the courts now. They don't, you can't admit that, you know, you can't have that evidence in here, because they don't try by evidence. They try by information. So now when we're looking at this, 12 of us, me and you, you know, 12 of us, the same kind of moral, with good morals, and we know what laws of nature are, nature's God is, and the Constitution, then we can look at it and go, okay, where do we, you know, the penalty in common law might be, you know, 10 years in prison, but we're the judges. So we can look at it and go, oh, well, you know, he was blackmailed. Let's not do that to them. You know, they have 3 children, you know, these types of things, responsibilities, you know, let's only give them 3 years, this type of stuff. That's up to us, because in our form of government, it is the Creator God, the laws of nature, nature's God. We answer to that authority. Then us, we the people. That's a trial by jury and grand juries. Right. So as long as we're in line with God's laws, we move forward. We get to determine that, not some corporation. You follow? So
right.
Answer?
I like that too, because if you're talking about God being our only authority, then by us having morals and ethics, then we will be under the right light of God. And if you decide to go against those morals, then you will answer to God, and that means you will answer to karma, which means that you will get that, you know, by karmic law, you will get the sort of repercussions of your actions if they're not in accordance with the law of the universe.
That's right, yeah, and that comes down to your intention, you know,
and your integrity.
Yeah, you know, so if you're walking with true intention, you know, and you're walking forward with those laws, that's the vibration you send out. Now, if I send out this other intention, you know, evil intent, I want to do harm, that's an intentional. I can feel it shift in my heart space as I say that. Okay, so, you know, and I go, oh, now I have to, that vibration is going to stay with me. It's not going to leave your consciousness. It's going to be a part of you, unless you've already sold your soul. And this goes back to, I think a little while ago, we were talking about Nietzsche, you know, the will to power, right? And this is, you are autonomous, you don't answer to anybody. That's an amoral society, no morals, right? Greed and power, you know, whatever it takes. When we don't have to function with that, when we go back to lawful money, gold and silver, then greed and power pretty much go out the window, because we live in an infinite abundance. And that's what people got to comprehend, infinite abundance. And this is going to be difficult for people, because we're so used to being brought into fear, scarcity, lack, limitation. And we were talking a little while ago about what happens if a child was abused. And now they're, you know, in this fear mode, and they're doing drugs or alcohol to try to deal with it, and they're moving forward, and they're committing some crimes, you know, because of this mindset, you know, they're locked into this fear. Well, I'll tell you right now, like the Church of Glad Tidings, Pastor Dave Bryan is doing some great stuff here in Yuba City. And what they've done is they've gone out to purchase this women's prison, this abandoned women's prison. And what they're doing is looking to buy that right now. As a matter of fact, they need $4 million, you know, by the end of the month to be able to seal that sale, and then they need another 12 to fix it up and so on. But the point is that what they're doing is setting that up, because as these trafficking rings get taken down, a lot of these children are abused. And they need to, find that trust,
Place
that
to
love,
rehabilitate.
So they're reaching out and doing this thing. And this is what we can do as a whole of all of mankind across the whole planet, right? Here in America or wherever. So when we're provided infinite abundance again, what we can do is, like one of the things here in Nevada County, I know that Paul James is behind this. He wants to be able to set up a number of acreage, 70 acre, 100 acres, whatever, and be able to bring in people to do spirituality, bring in holistic healing, and education, the real laws, and so on and so forth. So this is a community that's his vision that he wants to bring forward. Hopefully I can be a part of that. But does that help?
Yeah, and I like what you said, because I feel like all these people, when they're going to be trialed by jury, we will, as the people, our intuition will be able to tell whether that person has genuine remorse for what they've done, or if they feel nothing, and then you can sort of tell by somebody that can be rehabilitated or somebody that cannot. And I know a number of people that have had bad upbringings and went to jail and actually had a spiritual awakening in jail.
Right.
So I do feel like there is there is salvation and retribution for those people that are, or redemption is the word, for those people that are, that genuinely have made an error, made a mistake, and wish to right their errors.
Well, you just said a mouthful there, because really the jails, right, they're corporate entities now, and they're for-profit entities, and they want to keep them full because they make a lot of money on them. Okay, so and the judge, the whole system is bad. I think we can agree on that. Now, if somebody was to commit a crime is different than civil action, right? Crime, your life force is being taken away. Okay, so your freedom is being taken away, and that can only come from other sovereign beings. That's why you have trial by jury of peers, your sovereigns. Okay, so when we put them in jail, right, say our prison, the idea is to have them go there and give them the facilities to be able to connect with Source, connect with God, be able to rehabilitate themselves, to be able to be a functioning member of the community. So when they come out, now they come in and they're able to give back, to all of mankind. You see, so this is something that we can bring forth too as a people. So there's lots of projects that are going to open up for us. When we go back to real lawful money, there'll be lots of opportunities for us to set, to change these systems.
Yeah,
Okay?
and we're already seeing it. I already see people coming up with solutions for free energy, people coming up with solutions of how to eat with mushrooms, eating the plastic, how to clean the oceans. There are a lot of people coming up with these beautiful solutions of how to clean up the mess that we've already been in. And I think that is how we can see that there is proof that there is an awakening. I know that a friend of mine went down to Texas, and he was seeing people that would normally be very closed off to sort of these very spiritual ideas or questioning the government. And now we're going off to different cafes and different places, or like bars, and we're seeing people are talking about these things. It's like most of the world have now taken that red pill, and they're now actually starting to speak the truth, question the government, question what's going on. There's a huge awakening happening. There's a lot of solutions that are on the table that people are coming forth with. In the past, I think like the electric car came out and they squashed it in the 80s because of the fuel companies didn't want that coming out, and now there's too many. There's just too many ideas coming out that they can't silence the people that have these solutions anymore, because there's simply too many of us. And with the internet, things are now getting decentralized. All of these projects, all of these solutions, there's just too many to silence now, and that's how the proof is the awakening is happening.
Exactly. A lot of those things were repressed, and anybody who did bring up something like there's cars that run on air. Okay. But who's going to hear about that? Nobody, right? And if you did try to make that public, well, your life would be at stake. A lot of people have been disappeared or mysterious plane crashes or whatever, right? So they went out of their way to ensure that none of this was available to us. I mean, just from an engineering standpoint, let's look at the car. The combustion engine came out, in the late 1800s, 1900, turn of the century. How long have we been driving a car? Come on, that same technology. Look at the advances made in computers in every other area of our lives, right? So there's a lot of technology out there that is free energy and so on and so forth. So, I'm getting a 5-minute wave, so. So we, absolutely. Now, how can we bring this forth? Well, once, we do make this flip, this revaluation, right, and we're freed, as like to a biblical reference, if you don't mind. But when you flip the tables on the bankers and we become the creditors, now we're able to bring forth all of this abundance. We've removed their power, okay? Now it'll be up to the people going to wethepeople2.us, getting that knowledge so that we know where we hold the power. Because it's going to require a lot of us to stand up into these positions, these newly elected positions of so-called government. And then we can bring forth all of this thing. And keep this in mind, okay? As we move forward into the du jour, what we're talking about is the government licenses businesses, okay? Now, you cannot transfer a power or authority you don't have. The government does not have the power to violate your right to life. They can't poison you, okay? So I can't give that to a corporation to come out and poison you. If you get my meaning, because these corporations have to incorporate the Constitution, which would mean your rights. I can't write a policy as a corporate entity and say, well, now I can poison you. I can put, red, colored dye in the food because, and we know it's a poison, right? Along with fluoride in the water. No, you don't have that. We didn't give you that authority. So this is when we start to take our power back and know that corporations cannot violate our rights, period. Okay? So a lot of this comes back to that mindset, abundance. How do we give it back? Each one of us has our own gift. Yours might be holistic healing. Well, if I was to say, okay, I'm going to plop $10 million in your pocket, what would you do with it? Send me a proposal. Let me look it over. Perhaps there's 10, 20 other people doing the same thing. Perhaps we get you all to work together on one project, one program to do it. There's a thing called primary water. I'd like to see that come forward. Pure, fresh, abundant, clean water coming out of the earth all over the place. Why aren't we using that, right? Why don't we train some well diggers to learn how to do that, get our farmers going, right? How do we clean up the soil for our farmers so they don't have to use poisons for pesticides or GMO seeds? So these are major projects that are coming up. When we go through this, there's going to be a lot of opportunity for a lot of good people to bring forth their gifts and their talents to be able to walk forward. This is truly on the horizon, okay? So we got to walk with this, because embody it, embrace it. The more that we imagine it and feel it, the more we bring it forth as well.
Well, I feel inspired and I definitely feel a lot of hope, and that's definitely the intention of our talk. And I like what you said. There is infinite abundance. There is infinite resources. We have been led into a scarcity loop and lack, which is not real, and it's a form of control. And truth is, there is infinite abundance and for all of us to thrive. So I look forward for all of that happening, and I hope people listening to this call will feel inspired to share their gifts and to step into their dharma, into their soul mission, in whatever call, whatever fire inside you that is burning for you to step up and to create a positive impact and make this world a better place. Do it, because we need you now more than ever, and you're not alone, and there's many of us doing this movement together.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I know what I wanted to mention. I'll end on this good note too. There's a site you can go up and look at, the sealed indictments. There are over 473,000 sealed indictments Okay, there's over 73,000 of them in the state of California. The next behind that is Texas and New York with the most, and then you got the other states as well. What's so important about that is an indictment is a criminal charge. Now, it could be treason, could be genocide, it could be, high crimes, something, okay? These criminal indictments, where do they come from? They come from the grand juries. Now, who's been putting this together? We didn't know about them, right? But somebody's been putting them together. And this is when we'll see the arrest wars happen. And when we start looking, there is a season in Scripture, and a season is actually 1 year in our time, that judgment will occur. Where does that come from? 473,000 sealed indictments. Probably take about a year to get through them all, don't you think?
It's very exciting.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Tony, for all of that information, and for, I think, leaving on a note of instilling hope in the people that are watching this. Don't always, listen to the mainstream media if you can. Just stop listening to that altogether, because it's all propaganda and it's all to instill fear and control. We're trying to do the opposite of that, instill hope, show people that we have the power, that we are together, we can unite, and we can take the world back and take our power back as the right authorities of God-given birthright human beings. I don't know if human beings is the right word.
Not the right word. Mankind.
Mankind. A lot of the words that we're using have different meanings that we don't know, and you cast a spell with these words, but that's a whole nother rabbit hole to go down.
Yeah, that's another couple of hours there. To wrap up, to empower the people, the question is, by what authority? And you can get that on wethepeople2.us. And you should see that on the screen. Go to that website. There's the Common Law series, the Common Law Academy. You can go to the first 5 episodes. There's also the Founding Documents series as well. It goes over the Declaration of Independence and the Constitutional Law. Because there's notices there, template notices there too, for you guys to learn from, so that the power is in your hands. And it's up to you to bring that forth. And the more people that do this, the more we make the change. If it's just one guy, it might make change, but it's easy to ignore one guy. You can't ignore 10,000, right? So this is where our power lies. So when we go back to a constitutional republic too, people are going to need to know how to run that constitutional republic, and it starts with comprehending that series, the first 5 episodes in the Common Law Academy and the foundational documents. So I'd like to end with that.
Awesome. Thank you, Tony. And for anyone watching out there, just know that the old paradigm of darkness is falling. We can see it in the entertainment industry, the medical, the government, the finance. Everything is collapsing. It's going to be a little bit messy. As the old falls, we will be rebuilding the new. Just keep the faith, keep hope. Just really every single day connect to the earth, connect to your heart, connect to the Creator. Just keep the power inside you. Know that you prepared for this time, that you have the courage, that you chose to be here at this time. I believe every single one of us chose to be here because we are very loving, beautiful souls, and we chose to be here to create a new world where we all thrive together as equal, and there's balance and harmony once again, and we will thrive. So just hang in there. It may be a little rocky for a while, but it's all happening as the greater plan unfolds and the light takes this planet back. So thank you so much for tuning in.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Tony.
it.
Thank you for watching. If this resonated and you wish to be a part of the change, please share and subscribe for more content.